HOA rules backfired. Now everyone's laughing at the president. Imagine this. A man builds a tall, beautiful fence to protect his home and family's privacy. But the HOA doesn't like it. They say it's too tall and demand he tear it down. Most people would give up, right? Not this guy. He takes down the fence, but what he puts up next leaves the entire neighborhood laughing, and the HOA absolutely furious. Stick around to hear how one man turned HOA pettiness into legendary neighborhood comedy. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another jaw-dropping story like this one. The story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Picture rows of manicured lawns, shiny SUVs, and a homeowners association, HOA, that acted less like helpful neighbors and more like the neighborhood police. One man, Marcus, had just moved into the neighborhood with his wife and kids. To give his family a little privacy, he built a beautiful wooden fence. It wasn't an eyesore. It wasn't falling apart. It was just a little taller than the HOA's strict fence height rule. And of course, the HOA president, let's call her Karen because you already know the type, wasn't having it. Karen loved rules more than she loved her morning coffee. She printed out violation letters, sent angry emails, and even stopped Marcus in the street to demand he tear the fence down. Marcus tried reasoning with her. He showed her the fence wasn't blocking anyone's view, wasn't unsafe, and wasn't bothering his neighbors. In fact, most of the neighbors thought the fence looked great. But the HOA didn't care. Rules were rules, and Karen was determined to flex her power. Finally, Marcus received the official notice. Tear down the fence within 30 days or face daily fines. Most people would have been furious. Some might have even moved away. But Marcus? He had a different plan. When the deadline arrived, Marcus complied. He took the fence down board by board, while Karen watched from across the street with a smug smile, arms crossed in victory. To her, this was proof the HOA always won. But what she didn't know was that Marcus had been researching the HOA bylaws very carefully, and he discovered something hilarious. While there were extremely strict rules about fences, walls, and other structures, there were almost no rules about hedges, shrubs, or landscaping, especially if they were under a certain height and neatly maintained. That's when Marcus had his light bulb moment. If he couldn't have a fence, he would build something even better. Something that would not only keep his privacy intact, but also give the whole neighborhood something to laugh about. So he hired a local landscaper, a true artist with hedge sculpting. Together, they came up with an idea so bold, so funny, that Marcus could barely contain his excitement. They would sculpt a giant hedge in the shape of Karen's face. Yes, you heard that right. The very person who forced him to tear down his fence would now have her giant leafy likeness staring back at her every single day. It took weeks of trimming, shaping, and careful design. Neighbors noticed something unusual was going on but didn't say much. Marcus played it cool, smiling whenever people asked what he was up to. Finally, the day of the reveal arrived. There it stood, tall and glorious. A perfectly sculpted green hedge in the unmistakable shape of HOA President Karen's stern face. The landscaper had captured everything: the furrowed eyebrows, the pursed lips, even her signature scowl. It was a masterpiece of petty revenge and horticultural comedy. The neighborhood erupted in laughter. Kids on bikes rode past, pointing and giggling. Parents stopped to take selfies. Even Marcus's wife had to admit it was the funniest thing she had ever seen. When Karen herself finally saw it, her jaw nearly hit the ground. She stormed across the street, red-faced, demanding that Marcus take it down immediately. But here's the catch. Marcus had done his homework. The hedge wasn't a fence. It wasn't a structure. It was a living plant, neatly trimmed and completely within the HOA guidelines. So when Karen filed an official complaint with the HOA board, they were forced to admit Marcus hadn't broken a single rule. Her own face, immortalized in hedge form, was now legally allowed to stand tall for all to see. From that day forward, Karen couldn't walk through the neighborhood without seeing her leafy doppelganger smiling, or rather scowling, back at her. The other neighbors absolutely loved it. Some even brought lawn chairs to sit and watch her reaction. A few neighbors started calling it the Karen Bush. Others referred to it as the President's Shrub. No matter the nickname, one thing was certain. Marcus had turned HOA tyranny into neighborhood comedy gold. Karen tried everything. She wrote more letters. She begged the board to do something. She even tried convincing the city that it was some kind of public nuisance. But every time the answer was the same. It's a hedge, it's neat, it's legal. There's nothing you can do. In fact, Marcus became somewhat of a local hero. His hedge wasn't just a funny prank. It was a symbol of standing up against ridiculous HOA overreach. Neighbors started waving to him more, stopping by to chat, and even bringing snacks for his kids. Karen, on the other hand, became the butt of every joke. Her own attempt to enforce power had backfired spectacularly. Instead of controlling Marcus, she ended up immortalized in greenery for the whole neighborhood to laugh at. And the best part? Every spring, when the hedge grew back a little thicker, Marcus had the landscaper come by to sharpen up the details, making her scowl even more realistic than before. So in the end, Marcus didn't just tear down a fence, he built a legacy. A living, breathing reminder that sometimes the best revenge is equal parts clever, legal, and absolutely hilarious. And the moral of the story? If you mess with people over petty rules, don't be surprised if you end up as the punchline of the entire neighborhood. That's the story of how one man turned HOA demands into comedy history. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves a good laugh at HOA drama.